I was born in Connecticut, which is in the north, and my father, who was a priest, got called to come to the southern part of the United States and start a church. And he came to the South with my mom and 5 children in the car, and my mom thought we were being sent to hell. And that year he was killed by a drunk driver. And so my mom was left in Nashville, Tennessee with 5 children. And I think for many of us who are called to this work, who are motivated to do social enterprise, there's a beginning of brokenness maybe in our lives that we are looking for healing and hope. That it's not just for others, but it's for all of us. And we do this work because we want it to be done like that for us. And for like me, many, many other people, when one tragedy happens, usually there are many, many more that follow. And for us, losing the wage earner, losing the head of the household, then you become vulnerable to what happens on the streets and in other communities that aren't always watching out for your well-being. For me, it was the new man that came to the church began sexually abusing me in the church for the next couple of years, between the ages of about 6 and 8. And so even after I finished college and graduate school and got ordained, I think my heart was always with the women on the streets. That while my story does not compare to the women that I serve who are survivors of trafficking, addiction, and prostitution, I had a heart to believe that we didn't have to leave anybody behind. So in 1997, we opened a house. We invited the women in. Women came in and did great work. I had never done business. I know nothing about business. I went to divinity school. I knew about community, and I knew that I had a deep desire to believe that love could be healing, that communities could be healing. So after we had had these houses, women could come stay 2 years free with no authority in the house. If you have a history of trafficking, abuse, young childhood trauma, you know that authority is a real trigger. So ours was really community-based where women could come together. But after 4 years, and we're talking about love, 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 the women are still dirt poor. On average, the women that we serve are first rate between the ages of 7 and 11, and they hit the streets between the ages of 12 and 16. So you can imagine how much work history there is, and it's just an invitation to come in and out of the prison system in the U.S. that has the highest per capita of people imprisoned in the world, I believe. Sometimes I make statistics up if they serve my purposes. You should know that. You should check everything that I'm saying. So we grew this company, and to my surprise, I found that it was really a beautiful business model. That community coming together and loving each other and believing that social entrepreneurship is a non-competitive sport where we can get more and more partners and come together in a sense of compassion and love, that we were growing a lot. And there were communities all over the world that I'm going to show you about that were saying, can you come help us? Can you come help us? Because the groups that we work with are generally very small. In the whole world of social enterprise, we're a tiny subset where the women are the mission. The workforce is the whole mission of the social enterprise. What we started with was a candle, and that's what I wanted to show. Can I do the slideshow? We started with a candle because for us, it was really important to make something that was healing for the body, that was good for the earth, and that we could do without messing it up. And that candle has one ingredient in it. It's soy wax. It burns down to an oil. We use natural. We add a little bit of essential oils to it, a few drops, and we just make them and double the price and sell them. And for me, that's how complicated social entrepreneurship was when we started 15 years ago. That truly, to have a social enterprise, you have to make something, and then you have to sell something. And there's a lot of groups that are good at making stuff, and planning and having marketing meetings, and they never get to this really good part of selling stuff and saying, okay, so here's the story, here's the mission. Will you buy a candle? And at some point you have to get there to say, will you buy this? Will you participate with us in this vision? And for me, it was a really good exercise to see what our ideals look like in the marketplace. Does this have value in the marketplace? Can we hold up? And the truth was, we could. So we went from that to making a body balm, which is also very easy. And the other reason those were really good products to start with is they have long shelf lives. So you had time, like when we started with a cafe and you're doing baked goods every day, it is such a short life, and you have to be able to have your markets ready and go. These can sit on a shelf for 6 months, and nothing bad happens to them. So we can go on the road and go to churches and go to community groups, tell the story, sell the products, and we can offer it that way. So we began to expand from there and get more complicated and get more diversified, because what we understood and what everybody tells us is that you want to be able to take up at some point shelf space. So you can't just stay there as a social enterprise and sell a candle. Either you need to do 20 cents of that candle where everybody thinks they have to have all the scents, or you have to diversify the products so you can do all the bath and body care products or all the different clothing items, and you just keep expanding. So for us, the candle became central. That what we wanted to do as a social enterprise is never deviate from that mission. So we start work every day and we light a candle so that we don't forget. It is so easy in this world to get caught up in everything and forget. I am forgetful, and you can be forgetful too. It's never a problem to grow as a social enterprise. In order to be sustaining, you have to be growing. You can't stay where you are and sustain a social enterprise. If you're any good at what you do, the demands for the labor will increase. The people who want to work will increase, so you have to keep increasing the market. But what you also don't want to do is forget the mission and to have small things that help you remember why it is we start. So we light the candle in the middle of the circle every day, and we say we light this candle for women who are still on the streets, for babies who are born without a choice, for the woman still trying to find her way home. We light this candle for those who are in prison. We light this candle for women we may never meet and who never know that we are thinking of them and holding them up in light. Some of our work involves now marketing with other groups and with trying to figure out how we can have joint products. We partnered with a group in Accra, Ghana, that was recycling the drinking bags, and they were turning them into beautiful, beautiful products that we ended up making like a makeup bag out of it and being able to put all our products in it. There's a group in Ecuador, a women's group there, that ended up making a whole healing oil case for us that we could put our oils into. And what I want to specifically focus on today is this product that developed as an example. Those are healing oils. And that dropper, it's basically a cheap carrier oil like an olive oil or jojoba oil or sweet almond oil. And to that, you add essential oil. So one of the groups we started partnering with back in 2008 was a group in Rwanda. It's a group of women who are all survivors of the genocide where 20 years ago, 1 million people were killed in 100 days. The women were farmers before, and they were farmers after. So Nicholas Hitimana, Dr. Nicholas Hitimana, who survived the genocide, and he had escaped to Scotland with his wife and child, ended up getting his PhD in where insects and plants interact. And he ended up doing his PhD in helping save the African yam from the caterpillar by planting other plants that confused the smell. And then he felt called to social enterprise, to go back to Rwanda, to go back to the community that he had come from and help them start geranium fields. And so the women have a cooperative there. There's close to, I think, 350 women farmers now, and there's 4 different farms. They grow geranium, patchouli, lemongrass, and eucalyptus. And the beautiful thing is, you know, when we hear all these amazing presentations, and those were great presentations today, I get a little bit overwhelmed, especially about the small work that I do. Does that make sense? Do y'all get that way sometimes? It's like, did you see those numbers up there and how like the globe is going to blow up? And all the government heads are horrible. And there's nothing we can do. And there's 1.2 million people trafficked and all these things are happening. And you get to a place like that geranium field and you're like, you know, 1 million people were killed. In that particular farm, there's 35 women farmers who keep going. And in Nashville, Tennessee, our 2-year housing program is for 30 women. We have 150 just on our waiting list. And we do education days and try to help other communities start programs that are similar. 70 women employed at the company. And those numbers sometimes don't even feel like a drop in the bucket. That our efforts and the work we do sometimes feels so insignificant. So, 2008, Nicholas and I decided to partner. Ikarizi is the name of his social enterprise. And we started buying geranium oil, which, by the way, you should have here. It is also a bug repellent. It is an amazing mosquito repellent. And it started with a joint project with USAID and was considered anti-malarial because it was so effective. That's what the geranium in Rwanda looks like. So we're going to ship it over here. We're going to do this work. It's going to be awesome. And I don't know how many of you know what that is, but that is what in Tennessee is a sign of real success. That's called a still. Have you ever heard of Jack Daniels? Okay, so once we started importing these oils, we started to want to learn how to make our own oils. So we brought the geranium oil over here. We started putting it in the products. We went to one particular place in Houston, Texas. We always try to go to the women's prisons as well as hit the streets so that we can share the story. And we got to the Houston prison, and imagine this room but the opposite. It was in August. There was no air conditioning in the women's prison in Houston. And Houston is hot. And this is old school. And the women worked in turnip fields where the guards were on horseback. So they gathered all the women into a room like this. And between the sweat and the turnips and the horse manure, you can imagine what the smell was like. Passed out our materials that we brought with us about women and community and healing. And the first woman just laid the paper over her face and started breathing it in. "What is that smell?" she said. All our oils had evidently leaked into the paper. And there was a drop of geranium oil on that paper. So what happened was a group of women who survived genocide in the middle of Rwanda went back to the fields where they dug up the bones of people they loved and planted healing plants and harvested them, shipped them to another group of women who in Nashville, Tennessee, had survived more than I can imagine and stamped "Love Heals" on every product. They had then gone in an airplane through prison walls where a drop of oil landed on a piece of paper for a woman in prison to breathe it in. If a drop of oil can do that, I am hopeful about my work. You should be hopeful about this work that you do. In this work, it is not size. It is not big or small. It is about infusing it with hope, about empowering all of us to keep going and doing this work to be better together. When we bought this still and we started manufacturing our own oils last year, I was so excited. I thought it was going to save us tons of money. And you were not kidding when you said not every idea is good. I've had a million bad ideas. So we packed in 20 pounds of lavender into this, in that big part. Packed the lavender in. Set the water underneath it, boiled it up. All the steam catches, and then it cools, and the oil and the water separate, and the oil comes off the top. The water comes off the bottom. 20 pounds. And then I just sat there and waited and waited and waited for my liquid gold to come out. And then I got a chair, and I sat down, and I was waiting. About 45 minutes later, drip, drip, drip. 20 pounds of lavender, I got 5 milliliters of oil. I was like, are you kidding me? Who does this? This is awful. I mean, I'd much rather just make a lavender bundle and just sell it for $12 and be done with it and say, you do that. But isn't that beautiful about this work? That the essence of what it's about, the essential part, is so small and pure and beautiful, and everything else gets washed away. That what we do, that what I do may be small, but it is essential. It is beautiful. It is healing, and it is good. The other reason, that is so sweet, thank you. Okay, so the other reason that we have to do this work together, that we have to have partnerships and be willing to help one another with all that we have, is because usually in social entrepreneurship, especially in this subset that I keep talking about, where women are the mission, the reason that many of them fail, in addition to not having enough markets, is because we have no resources. So people give you their leftovers. People give you the last thing that they have. And then they say, do something amazing. And make it professional. And make it cheap. And also pay living wages. And do it with a great heart for the environment. No one can do that alone. And the example I want to use is, this is the building that we were given for our cafe. And it's basically exactly, Peter, what you were talking about. It's just like you get the worst. And then you go, okay, I'm going to raise a couple $100,000. That means we'll have no money for floors. And people can just sit on a cushion of some sort. And so you get community together. And you get people who are willing to not be cynical, who still believe that we can make a better world together, and you can transform things like that to this that we did last year. And so this is, thank you, this is the Thistle Cafe, and this floor was donated. It's a 150-year-old redwood floor from Al Gore. Do y'all know who Al Gore is? Oh my God. I know you don't like him. Don't worry, I know that. Huh? Oh, you like him? Okay. That's right, he lost. He's a good guy. His parents' tobacco barn up in Tennessee. And so you could not buy this floor anywhere. But also you couldn't hardly lay it. It was so warped, tongue and groove. And it took about 150 men to lay this floor that you cannot get anywhere else in the world. You can't even harvest those trees anymore. Two things happen when you do something like that. When you get really creative with flooring or whatever it is in your social enterprise that tells the story. One, we have 150 men who are now customers that walk in and go, I helped lay that floor. And they bring their business colleagues in. They bring people in. I did that. And people have ownership. The more people you involve on the front end, the better it is. If your social enterprise is your idea and you have control of it, it will never get bigger than you. It has to be a communal vision, and none of us in this room alone have the best ideas. I can contribute some good ideas, you can contribute some good ideas, but together we can create something that none of us would have thought about alone. We knew that we wanted tea to be central. Tea has been central to the world of trafficking forever. The opiate wars, there's a million examples. And in colonialism, in clipper ships, and marketing, tea has been there at every war, at every peace treaty. So we knew we wanted to be about tea. A story in every cup, that each one of us brings a story to this social enterprise venture. And so what we did was, this man came up with the idea that he's an interior designer, and basically each one of the chandeliers, there's 5 of them, cost about $25. And all the cups are for survivors. It's about 8 different countries of people who sent us cups from women who have survived. It could have been their grandmother. It could have been in memory of someone they heard talk one time. It's a bunch of stories. And it changes the way that you can do business and adds depth and meaning. So for us, the social enterprise really had to have 4 components. It had to be about hospitality. That is old school, where the guest is the honored person. That we welcome all, period. 2, it had to be about healing. We had to be, everything we did, whether it was the chandeliers, the floors, or the scones, or the body care products, we wanted something that was about healing. Tea can be healing for the body. Community is healing for the body, and especially bodies that have been broken, to be about healing is critical. 3, it was about Chado, the way of tea, the idea that you can have simplicity and beauty together, that you can have lavishness and economics together. Those are not different terms that do not translate with each other. They go together. For us at Magdalene, we built a house that was right at $1 million, and it housed 8 women. This was back in 2005. And if you look at the numbers now, between incarcerating a woman and having her housed at a Magdalene program that takes no federal or state funding, we can do it for less than half, and you're living in a beautiful home. Chado. It's about intention, beauty, simplicity, lavishness, economics, Chado. And 4 is always story. I mean, we come from Music City. We are about story. If you can't tell it in a 3-minute story, don't bother. So, for us, we have been growing, and I just wanted to show 3 graphs because I've thought that would look better. So, we have surpassed that for the 6 months. Our 6 months, our year starts in July, and we're on track to do about 1.3 million in bath and body care products this year. That does not mean that covers the whole organization. Thank you. And that's the word I want to get out there, is the word, it's a sustainable model. People will throw that word at you, sustainability, like you're not any good if you get any grants. Does that make any sense? And it's like, if I can house 30 women, do all the training, talk to women who are coming out from underneath the bridges, off the streets, and out of prison, and make them ready to be homeowners for $400,000 a year, that is amazing. And you should invest in that. And then I can use 1.3 million to then grow a business, make it part of the sustainable effort, and raise more money. There are people who are going to be attracted to your work as a not-for-profit because you are sustainable. So for the way it looks for me as an entrepreneur that I've learned is this. I have a candle, and it cost me $5.60 to make it. I can sell that candle for $20 on the internet, but I have to pay for the shipping. I can go to a party where 15 women are gathered, or 15 women and men, and we share the stories, and we sell the candles, and I can sell them for 20, but it's more labor intense for the women to come, and you pay for that. I can sell it to one of our 400 retail outlets at $10, but I can move 1,000 candles at a time in that so that women have work all day long that are sustainable. But if I go to the right person and I can tell them the story that I know, which is about saving women's lives and healing some broken systems, I can sell that candle for $1,000, $10,000. That's the beauty of social entrepreneurship too, is that you carry a mission that gives value to that candle that you may never know. But if I didn't have that candle and I go to those same donors, I may not get an investment. People want to invest when they know it will multiply out. So for us, we have a three-pronged way of doing the sales, which is really internet, parties, and retail. And we need all three of them. And we have been in conversation with people that want us to grow different aspects of it. But really for us to stay solvent and keep everybody busy, we have to do all three. We just hired 7 new women in January. Nobody in retail hires 7 new women in January. It's awful. And then, of course, they were talking about the triple bottom line. There it is. So this shows that when we do our budgets, we actually put in there, and now that number is close to $750,000, how much we save the city just by being there. So that when you do, we make $1.3 million, then we add $750,000 in savings. You can just add whatever you want and be creative, I think. That's my personal opinion. This just shows, here we are. This shows some of the markets and some of the groups. So what I want to get to, though, is this idea of shared trade, which is an effort so that people can shop online in one e-commerce site with groups that are committing to be together as shared trade partners. And what it looks like for us is that we are able to be the distributor, because what happened as a small social enterprise, we could not afford any distribution. People were taking 30% off a 50% wholesale price. So for us, we had to start learning how to be the distributor. So now we can go to, let's say, the group in Accra, Ghana. We can buy at 60% instead of 50%. And Accra's commitment at that wholesale price, 10% above it, is directly to help the women that are in the program, whether it's individual IDA, match savings account, or education for the women. And then we distribute at no cost. So that's what Isabel's grant helped us do, is to be able to pay bigger margins to producers, remove that 30% middle part, and be able to sell it so most of the money goes back to every group. And so far there are 14 partners that have bought into it, and we are just beginning the journey, and we are learning a ton about it. This is the most recent one. We were in Uganda this summer. That is Canon Gideon, who has Hope University. He has won basically the equivalent of a Nobel Peace Prize in Japan. He won about $750,000. He bought this beautiful land for vulnerable youth in Uganda in a pretty repressive culture. He is speaking out about love without judgment, about welcoming the vulnerable in. And so we have started a tea company with some women farmers there. It's the first time we've ever written a jingle. We have a Hope Tea jingle, and we've started shipping it. And people are so in love with the tea where we are in Nashville that we actually have a shortage of Hope Tea at this moment. Isn't that a great problem? In social enterprises, we don't have enough of it right now. We're so excited. So I just want to end with one story, and that story is Doris. And Doris packs parties for us. So she's in the lower part of our building, and she packs everything we take, whether it's on a road trip to a college, whether it's to a women's group, whether it's a business group. And she does it with such joy that she actually wrote a song, and the lyrics contain all 23 items that we sell in the lyric. It's very impressive if you heard her do it. And it rhymes. I mean, she doesn't just say it. It's like a whole beautiful, beautiful song. But Doris, like most of the women I serve, she came from a really, really difficult background, including seeing the murder of her father before her when she was very young. So she hit the streets pretty early. And the way that she describes it is that she was stuck in a 10-block radius for 26 years. A 10-block radius for 26 years. Not because it was so safe, not because she found home there. She was stuck. Whether that is about addiction and fear and trauma. No choices. You know, when people talk about choices, you say, what are the options when that's the choice in people's lives? Finally made her way to Magdalene. And the first thing that you really did notice about her was that there was no dampening of her hope and her spirit. She is infectious in her joy, so much so that, you know, one of the joys of this work is we go around the U.S. and really sell all these products and try to drum up interest in other communities starting sister programs. The first time, you get to see so many firsts in people's lives. So it was the first time Doris flew. She was laughing so hard down the runway when the plane started taking off. And finally, you know, she just pulls out her camera right when, you know, her phone camera, when you're still not supposed to have that stuff on. Starts taking pictures of the top side of clouds. And the guy that's the flight attendant gets on the microphone and says, you know, he could see that she was laughing. All the people around her were laughing. He said, as soon as we get to 10,000 feet, the first round of drinks for you is on me. And I was like, you really, really don't want to do that. That's a very bad idea to give Doris a drink. But I, as her pastor, will drink it for her. I'm not really her pastor. I just said that so I could get a free drink. So we get there and we get to where we're headed, and you will appreciate this being on an island. Doris had never seen the ocean. First chance we get, we step out on the beautiful sugary sands, and she just lifts her arm and she said, God did a good job. But when her feet did hit the tide and she felt it for the first time, she said, has this been doing this my whole life? This whole 26 years she was wandering around a 10-block radius. My God, as long as the moon has been spinning around this earth, that tide has been coming in and out. On your shore, on my shore. And older and more powerful than that tide is love. It is enough to carry her. It is enough to carry our community. It is enough to carry this community. But sometimes we need a community to get us down to the shore to feel it.